Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jackie Clark, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I am super excited to be joined yet again by another incredible guest from far, far away from me, which is always incredible. So, do you want to start by telling everyone who you are and where you are in the world?
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Um, my name's Melissa Nyad White, and I live in Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is just south of Washington, D.C.
Amazing, amazing. So, literally on the other side of the world. We were just saying before we started recording that we are morning and afternoon in time zones at the moment. So, thank you so much for jumping on with us and coming to share your story. We really, really do appreciate all of our guests taking the time. So, as you know, we're here to talk about your healing journey and talk about what you went through and, just share your story so it can bring hope and inspiration to others. So do you want to take us back to the beginning and tell us like what was the turning point for you? What led you to be like, oh, something needs to change now and I need to do some healing?
Yes. So I am a mother of 6 children, and nothing challenges your pretending everything is fine like having children. And I'd gotten to a point where my marriage was really rocky. My relationship with my children wasn't good. I wasn't really able to be the kind of mother or wife that I wanted to be. And I went through kind of a crisis where everything went numb and gray. And I just I couldn't I couldn't figure out how to maintain this. I'm a really good mom and I'm a really good wife. I wasn't able to maintain those like personas anymore at the level that I felt like I needed to. And also we brought in a young woman who had we invited my daughter's best friend in to live with us because she had been in difficult circumstances, and she had borderline personality disorder and a couple other things. And I watched her in her distress choose like the negative over and over. And I was like, am I doing this? Am I choosing the negative over and over? And I just decided from that day it was either going to be kind of tap out or heal. Like I knew I had to actually choose the healing path. So,
Gosh, I love that so much. It's so interesting how we get, things get put in our path to give us those moments, don't they? So having that moment where you had to face, like, am I doing what I'm seeing in this other person? Am I recognizing this because I'm actually doing it myself?
mhm,
And now I know I need to do something different. And
mm,
that moment of making a conscious choice of actually, I now is the moment that I need to do something because I can't keep doing this.
yeah. It was
That's
like it was like I had to choose. I mean, I felt in that moment like my life is either going off a cliff or choosing something to live, like really live, and whatever that took. And it felt really scary.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And for so many people, they choose to stay in those situations way longer than they potentially needed to
Hmm.
because the choice of taking that step is so scary. Because the choice of I've got to do something different and it's unknown and I don't know where it's going to lead and I don't know, what I'm going to lose or what I'm going to gain or what this is going to look like. That can be
Oh.
such a scary place for people to be. So what did you have to do in that moment? What did you have to kind of embrace about yourself, like realize? What did you do to get moving?
Mm. So the first thing I did was I read some books. I read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And that helped me because in that book she talks about like living your desire to create bravely, like treating it like it's your lover on the side almost. And I remember reading that book, and I had been making some choices like over time. I decided, okay, I'm gonna I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to send my kids to school. I'm going to go back to school myself. I started making these new, like, things must change, and I must make decisions that, while they may bother other people and they may shift some of the status quo, I must make them, because if I don't, I won't survive. It was literally life and death for me. It, if I'm honest, there is this place when your old story becomes so much BS that you just can't stomach your own stuff anymore. And you're like, it's more uncomfortable being as I am than it is to make the step to change. And then when that happens and you decide to make the step to change, every little bit of glimmers of light on this new path drives you forward, because at the end of it, inside the end of it is something so much better, I think. Yeah. But it is scary. And so I read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, and to go back, and I just remember, man, if you can choose to create what you want, why can't I choose to create the life I want? Why can't I choose to shift things? And I remember thinking that my life was traveling forward like a cruise ship, and it was really hard to turn. Just so much momentum forward, and it was really hard to change. And I got so much resistance from the people around me, but it did change. It needed to. I really had no choice. If I wanted to live, I needed to change.
It's so like everything you're saying, I just resonate so deeply with. Like that moment where the story that you're telling yourself,
Mhm.
you can't look at it anymore. You can't accept it anymore. You can't sit there and think, oh yes, this makes sense. Like normally you can rationalize the situation that you're in, and all the while that you can rationalize, you're not going to change it. All the while that you can point blame at somebody else, or, sit in your own space and be like, well, it's not me, it's that system or that person, or, like it's so easy to point at all of these different places and say, well, if I was, born in a different country, or born into money, or, born into a different social class, or, born into any of these other places, or to different parents, or, got to go to a different school, like we can literally sit and we can go all the way back to the beginning and say, I could rewrite this whole path and it would be different.
Mm.
Or we can sit in that moment and accept that this is where we are and this is who we are, and just take responsibility and get moving and do something about it. And I think for so many people, getting to that moment and deciding that something has to change is the hardest part of the journey. Once they've actually decided, it's easy to then be like, okay, these are the things I need to do, these are the actions I need to take. But when you're still in that deciding moment, it can be
Mhm.
really hard. And I think for so many people, they also look around to the people around them to say, these people now need to help me. Now, I've decided I want to be different. All of the people around me need to do that as well. And if the people around
Sometimes,
them
yeah.
don't, yeah,
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, well, then obviously we can't do this because not everyone's doing it. But I like what you said, like you got resistance from people around you and you were kind of just like, oh, well, like,
Well, and this is going to sound really terrible, but I remember looking at my children who were angry that I was sending them. I homeschooled them for 18 years, and they were angry and scared because they were having to undergo a change as well. And I remember thinking, I didn't say this to them, but I remember thinking it's better to have a mom who's busy healing herself than a mother who's not alive. Like,
yeah,
I think. And honestly, at the time, I was like, I think this is better, because I was in a rough place. And yeah, it does, you are like cycling in your survival mechanisms, almost like the trauma, um, the coping mechanisms to perform in the world, to achieve some level of success at being a mother and a wife. And maybe some people think that's silly, but my trauma was I was a victim of childhood sexual assault as a small infant. I'd been neglected, moved around. I was almost like a foster child within my family, and and I wasn't with my, I didn't ever have a consistent caregiver or um, a parental figure. And I will admit that that caused trauma. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying I wasn't harmed, but I tried to like build a, like be better and do better than my adults, be the parent that I needed. And it's funny how your children trigger things that happen to you in childhood, like when they reach the same age that you were. And when I gave birth to my first daughter, I immediately went into this terrible, what I thought was postpartum depression, and perhaps it was a little bit, but there was unremembered trauma that she triggered, and my body remembered, but my mind did not. And so that was why I went into this terrible depression when she was born. I realize now that I've done all the work that I've done and I've learned everything I've learned. I realize now that sometimes mothers go into postpartum depression because they themselves had terrible trauma at a very, very young age and they don't actually remember it. So, but yeah, the choice is important. And the thing is for me, the choice wasn't just one time. The choice has been over and over. And I describe it as I'm called to come to a cliff and it's all clouds. And I'm just told to just leap. And it's your whole body is like, no, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. And you're like, if I die, I die. You have to just say, I must leap. I must jump off this cliff. If I die, I die. Like I must. There's no choice here. And when life pushes you like that, and it has me over and over, and I'm not saying it's not scary because it absolutely is, and my whole body resists. But man, the rewards from just gritting your teeth and just being like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna live, even if it means it ends my life. You know what I mean? Like I'm living. And yeah. And it's been an adventure. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And again, I had such a similar um picture in my mind when I was when I was coming out of depression. Mine was not clouds, and yours sounds quite beautiful. Mine was cliff and just pure darkness,
Oh,
and feeling like I had to just step off that edge and being so petrified. Like I can absolutely connect with that feeling of like no idea what's below, and the visceral feeling in your body of like, I don't know if I can continue. I don't know if I can continue this fight. So I think that that's such an incredible thing, especially for people to understand that it's time and time again. It's not just one choice and then it's done and you've done the hard work. It's time and time again that you have to kind of go through that cycle. So I think that that is so, so incredible. And I guess I want to know, like, what was the biggest outlook shift for you? What was the biggest, like, mindset change for you as you went on this journey and you started to heal and, become the person you wanted to be? What
mhm.
shifted?
It wasn't right away. I think I was still very into like victim mentality for a long time. I was just repeating the same things with new relationships or new whatever. But there came a point where um it was like I was being so in this process, I became very even more emotionally reactive for a while. For a while, I had completely repressed my emotions and I was like very zombie, like just like not emotional. And when I began to start to feel my emotions, which I knew was necessary, but I became very reactive um and I started to isolate myself a lot. And there were many learning points, but the biggest shift was when I decided to set aside time once a week to just feel. I created a container for myself. I scheduled it, and I would um, maybe take a little bit of a cannabis edible because just the tiniest bit, just to kind of like open the body so I could feel into my body because I was so fractured away from my feelings. I had repressed so much. And I felt like inside I had a whole planet of grief and betrayal and fear. I wrote a poem about it actually. But and I felt like if when I allowed a feeling to come up, there would be these like alarms going off in my body, like stop, stop, stop. Everything's going to come out. You're going to destroy this person. You're going to destroy your family. You're going to destroy your life with emotions. And so I decided, okay, so if I'm inside pressurized with these emotions, I'm going to set aside time to like depressurize once a week. And I would spend 5 hours every Sunday dancing, self-massage. I'd watch a sad movie if I needed to just kind of get in there. Um, I all kinds of like fascia work, foam rolling, yoga, um, dance, all these things. And I used them in like a as a like a ceremony almost. And I disciplined myself because it was far off along in the journey where I understood what emotion was, that I said, the stories don't matter here. This is just static in my body. This is just grudge and junk and gunk. And I just need to purge, process and purge. And I did that for 9 months. Like it was a lot. It was a lot. 40 something years of repressed emotions. And it wasn't really until I'd gone through that process of like purging and like an honoring this emotion so deeply. It deserves to be felt. It deserves to be processed. My feelings matter. Like I learned to honor my own grief and stuff. And after that, that was when the rebuilding began. Like I could actually dig into the stuff underneath the you could say wounds, but really the ideas that says I'm wounded or I'm not lovable or it was only after I purged emotion for 9 months that I felt safe enough to go into those patterns, safe enough with myself. Yeah.
Wow. I think it's just so incredible. Like so many people speak about this healing journey and I've interviewed so many people now on the podcast, and it's so beautiful to hear of this like ritual of feeling your feelings, like giving them the space that they deserve because they are so vitally important. And
Mhm.
a lot of people don't realize that you can't only shut off the bad. So you
Not
shut
only
off.
can you not, yeah, not only can you not, but trying to actually feeds the very thing that you're trying to avoid. The monster back there in your shadow. Every time you repress an emotion, you literally feed that and it gets bigger and it will take over your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's so important for people to know this. Like if you're struggling at the moment, that is a place to start. Like just feeling your feelings, not shutting things down, not, forcing yourself to not experience what is going on around you, because it's really dangerous. Like it's really dangerous to do that. And I think it's so incredible for you to actually have gone through that process so structured, like a set, we set hours aside, we do this in a structured way, we go through this movement, we like that is so, so, so beautiful. I absolutely love the concept of that. And like what came next? Like, so you then started to rebuild.
Mm. So I used to call it church, by the way, because it was on Sundays. Yeah. And I had come out of the church. I'm back in the church now, but at the time I'd come out of the church. But what happened next? Well, after I learned to hold space for myself and not expect other people to, which was a huge, like taking my power back kind of thing. Um, I decided, number one, to go back to school again. So I enrolled I actually moved here to town to go to university full time and finish my degree because I felt like after a lifetime of being a full-time mother and wife, I had this huge energy leak open. So I decided to do that, but that was more like I just want to finish this thing. But the really powerful thing that I did was um I had been told for a long time that I was really good at like dream interpretation and archetypal. Like I'm very interested in the big idea, the psychological ideas underneath why we do what we do. Like I studied psychology, I studied education, I studied literature. Like I understood these things about like metaphorical things and these mystical like archetypes that we hold. And I'd been talking about that and working like in shamanic realms and things like that for years. And then I came after this process of purging, I came upon the coaching program that I went through, which was actually if you probably know Carl Jung. I'm sure people have talked about Carl Jung. And so it was a Jungian life coaching program. And I was intensely coached in this program. You know, it was very rigorous, a very rigorous training. And there was a lot of coaching. And in this program, there were PhDs and people who'd been coaching for 10 years and people who'd gone to Pacifica, which is the Jungian, like the center of Jungian work. And yet they came to this program because it was so effective. And it was this, learning to interact with my shadow, the hidden things, the things I'd pushed back to the monster, interact with those in a way that felt like structured and safe. And I actually had a vision at the beginning of the program that kind of foretold exactly what was going to happen for me. And which is part of Jungian work. You work in the dream space. So whether it's in guided meditation or active imagination or in actual dreams or whatever, you interact with these symbols, dream symbols, basically. And yeah, that like I had gone from like being really messy and really emotional, and yeah, I'd purged all this emotion, but like how do I rebuild now? This was a very powerful, structured, and deep, like, I wasn't playing around with affirmations and just moving around the furniture and trying to create habits. I was going down to the very root of these behaviors that were self-sabotaging me or keeping me from moving forward, and I continue to do this work of individuation. I continue to, and it is the most I do with other things too, but this is definitely like I became a Reiki master too. And yeah, started my business as a shadow work coach. So yeah. Um, I can tell you that I'd worked for years like in healing and spiritual circles and with shamans, and I went to a mystery school before the purging process. And those things were beneficial, but for me, the most effective, and it could have been this because of all the purging, I will admit that. But yeah, it was just uh exactly exactly the medicine that I still need to go into the dream space and talk to my fractured aspects of self and these patterns that are passed down from my ancestors and society and say, "Oh, I see you now. I see you. How can I get you to be my ally instead of my enemy?" So
Mm. Oh, it's so beautiful. And I think that it's really incredible to kind of see this process of, from wounded child to mother to actually healing and going back into your own past and looking at your own generational trauma and saying, actually, what do I do about this? And how do I, ally all of this energy and bring everyone like, back into alignment and make sure that everything is supported.
mhm.
And then what does that mean for the next generation? Like, so many people sit and say, I want to heal before I have kids so that I don't pass on this trauma. But
Mhm.
actually, that's not always the case. Like, sometimes the generation is here, and then what? Like,
Yeah. And actually, yes, perhaps in their limited scope, my children wish that they'd had a healed mother. Perhaps they do. But from my perspective, they were the motivation to do work that was gut-wrenchingly difficult, like they motivate me. And when I do the work, when I shift a pattern in myself, especially if it's an ancestral pattern, I see it in my children. They change. They're, and it's not well, maybe I'm a little different, but I watch them make new choices when I overcome or understand and change an ancestral pattern in myself. And just because you have wounded your children, every person, we need a wound. We need a wound to open and awaken. We need a wound to individualize. And yes, I wish that I didn't wound my children. Of course I do. But that is still just a continuing motivation for me to, keep looking, keep looking at the patterns, whether they be relational or spiritual or ways I give away my power as a woman, as a whatever. Even how I interact with the masculine, uh, learning to make peace with the image of the masculine in me, or my own inner divine masculine, my animos, or whatever. These things are changing my reality and my children's reality. And so, yeah, it is important work. And man, I'm really yes, and I love working with women. I do. But the big area of life where I see so much is necessary, there's so much work to be done, is with men. And that's, I really kind of tried to turn my focus there. I've been called to, actually. I've been called to do that. And men, while I was fractured very deeply from my emotions, I was a woman. It was okay for me to be emotional sometimes, you know what I mean? And especially in American culture, emotional men, they're so programmed and socialized and pressured by, and it's not just little things. It's not just like the people in their lives. It's societal structures, it's philosophical structures. It's, these are big generational archetypal things that need to be addressed. And man, men need support. I think we're very hard on them, honestly. But if you think about the fact that most of us are building these big lives on the emotional foundation of a 6 or 7-year-old, most of us are like this. And yet we hand them all of this responsibility, and they've been socialized never to feel, never to look weak, and I guess there came a point where I realized, oh, I need to hold space like it's a womb. I need to hold space for rebirth, you know? I need to be a safe place to dissolve and restructure. And so that has been my goal. And it's an ongoing process. I still, every time I have a client who is angry at the feminine, I have to go back and do deep work for myself, but it's good work. And very every little advance that one of my clients makes feels like a huge triumph. Like I'm helping to change the world. I'm helping people to, and it's not like I'm doing it for them. I'm just holding space for it, because in the kind of work I do, our own consciousness kind of creates the curriculum. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going. Yeah.
It's such important work. Like it's such important work. And I completely agree with you that there is a massive need for more men's voices to be heard, for more of that shift in men being allowed to feel and men being allowed to exist in their feminine and in their masculine and move as fluidly as women are able to
Yeah.
through those spaces. So I think that that is such an incredible thing. And I guess what would your advice be? So if people are stuck at the moment, if they are at that turning point where they know that something needs to change and they don't know what it is and they don't know how to start moving, what would your advice be for people?
Stuckness is really hard, but what stuckness really is an internal barrier. We think it's the outside, but it's really an internal barrier. And it can be really difficult to do this. So I'm not saying this lightly, but what we really need to do is, in the discomfort of turning toward the thing that feels like a block within, in our bodies, in our own minds, to have a sense of like self-compassion and also courage. It takes a lot of courage. You really have to be a warrior to do this in some ways. You have to be, I'm going to be brave in spite of the fact that I feel terrified of my own gunk. And and you have to sit with it and allow it to very gently show itself to you. And that's very hard. And if it feels impossible, you can always begin slowly with somatic work or yoga or something in the body is probably best. But when you really, really want to dig in, you really want to change, really change, it's best to get help. It's very difficult to do that work alone. We need a Sherpa, we need a guide into our shadow because our nervous system creates that shadow to protect you from destabilization in your psyche. And in order to create new, this is all based in science, we have ingrained neural patterns in our brains, and it's very difficult to jump out of those without creating an internal alert. Something bad is about to happen. You are acting outside of your proven past successful behaviors. This has kept you alive. And when you're ready to stop acting like you're about to die and instead live your life, you have to make these choices that feel in your body like you might just die. So it's very difficult to really change those neural patterns by yourself because you're fighting survival. You're fighting survival. And it really helps to have someone who feels safe, who knows, isn't afraid, isn't judgmental, who is excited about, what you're doing and knows how to navigate that space with skill. It makes it so much easier because they're like, oh, that's interesting, instead of like, oh, horrible. You know what I mean? Because they understand that space. They understand the space of the rejected self and how we feel fear toward it. So getting help is crucial when you really want to change.
I completely agree. I think that ability to actually say to somebody that I need help is the first step to making big change. And it's really hard. Your nervous
Yes.
system will fight you every step of the way. It's literally its purpose in your life.
Yes.
And
Don't change.
literally,
Don't
no,
change. Yes.
absolutely. And it's that built-in system of safety. It's that built-in system of we need to stay in the community, stay in the tribe, be like everyone else, do the things we've always done. We can't be anything too radically different. And unfortunately, in the societies that have been built, that, the schooling systems that people have gone through, the work cultures that people work in pretty much most of the world, this is still seen as, you know, you have to stay within the line, and you have to have these 5 things to be successful, and there's a very distinct way that people feel that they have to live. And as soon as you start stepping outside of that, everything in your system is going to be an alarm because you're
And everyone,
outside.
and in the systems of everyone whose life touches yours, you are literally triggering everyone by changing because you are going against millennia of survival behavior.
Yeah.
But we are, we used to live only 40 years. Those are our survival instincts. Get us to 40, reproduce. That's the goal of our survival instincts. But it's almost like an adolescence. And this is the time of life where I help people. I call myself a midlife muse and soul siren. Yes. So there comes a time in like 35 to 55, and it's actually getting earlier because we have fewer and fewer survival issues. Um, we get a point where our survival needs are met, and yet we have a vast amount of time before us, where in the past it was time for us to just pass away and let our children live. And now we're not in that. Our genes say, you're supposed to pass away now. And yet we have 40, 50 years of life left. There is it's almost like adolescence, another coming of age. And it's to grow out of survival instincts into actualization, into what is my soul's purpose? Why am I here? What's my connection to the divine? What is my legacy to leave the world? What is important to me? Who am I really? What is my true self? All of those things come up in midlife, and they're a wonderful adventure, but they're scary to step. It's scary for yourself and everyone around you when you decide to step out of those programs that kept everyone alive thousands of years ago and say, actually, I'm going to live my life for myself because I don't think it's going to kill me.
Mm. Yeah. And exactly like you said, everyone around you will be trying so hard to get you back in line because they're also scared for your survival. They're scared for you breaking the armor and what does that mean for all of their survival? Like it's a natural instinct. And I think it's so interesting because so many people, when I work with my clients from a business point of view and they're starting a business and they speak to their families who all work in employment and they can't understand why their families are not supportive of this idea. And I'm like, it's because they can't comprehend not having somebody pay their salary because it is so far outside of their comfort zone that everything in them, every neuron of their system is saying, run back to safety, don't do it. This is insane. And it's so interesting because it works exactly the same in every aspect, whether it is around, you said earlier, being a wife, being a mother, being a father, being a friend, being a daughter or a son. Like every single aspect of your life has these criterias that are built in
Yeah,
that
what's a
we
good
then,
doctor? What's a
yeah.
good president? What's a good son? And you pull on these behaviors and personas to be good so that you can benefit people around you. Yeah. And it's a beautiful initiation into, oh, I don't live my life for other people. My life is not for other people. I live my life because it's my life. And yeah, maybe I want to bless other people, but it is a huge initiation and it's difficult and it does bother everyone around you. And it's important to know that they're not trying to harm you and they're just operating out of their own survival mechanisms. And that's often when people like break some of their communion and find new community that can support them. And yeah, and that's important. But the most important thing is for you to be your own biggest advocate, your own biggest lover, your own, like you there comes a point, and this is difficult for so many of us. I'm sure all your clients deal with this, where you're like, no, I value me just because I'm here. I love myself. I am worthy of love. I am worthy of care. And that's so ingrained that you're not, that we're not valuable inherently. Um, it's a huge step. And it is important, I think, to normalize it and to say, okay, yeah, this is a midlife crisis, but you didn't choose it. It chose you. Your continuing evolution said you must change. And I would love to normalize that in our society instead of like looking at someone and being like, "Ugh, they're going through a midlife crisis. I would love to see it like, oh, yeah, that's a rough time. They need more support. They need more care. They need more grace. I would love to bring that forward. Yes.
Speak it into existence. I love it.
Yes.
It's so beautiful. Okay, so final question then. What is your next level of healing? I always love asking people this question because healing is an ongoing journey, and I love for everyone who's listening to have that real sense of we're all in this together, we're all still figuring it out. Like, you don't get to the end and be like, ta-da! So, what does that look like for you?
Well, I will tell you, if you're Jungian at all, the last time, so I also have a coach. Most coaches have coaches, like, no, no, we understand you can't do the work by yourself. Um, and I was sitting in a shadow work session, a visualization, and what came forward was my Amazon and my inner female warrior. And in that work, that's the kind of the businesswoman. My business is definitely my next growth edge, especially as I switched my niche. Oh yeah, that's your wheelhouse. Yeah. Especially as I switched my niche to men, um, primarily men. I still work with women, but yeah, there are new challenges, there are new resistances, there are new in me, like I was very resistant to being the Amazon. I this part of me didn't feel safe. I knew I needed it because I projected it out onto the men in my life, right? My masculine relationships. I dated all Marines for a while, like these were warriors, and I needed to bring that. I could see, oh, this is what needs to come forward in me because I'm projecting it out onto other people. So Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. And it has been really scary. So how that feels when I'm doing that is like I will be clicking along and really guided and have a lot of energy, and then boom, I feel stuck. And then I'm like, oh, why are things not working? And then I have to be like, oh, let's step back and dig in again and find out where's my inner resistance. And it's become so like, I've been doing this for years now. So the most efficient way to move forward right now is to go within and find out what's going on in you. And it works. Yeah, that's my for everything. I sit in meditation, we start working, I'll bring it to my coach. Yeah. So yeah, that's my new growth edge. Um, yeah. And it's good, but it's also scary.
It is. And but the thing is that it's so incredible because like I always say to people, you cycle through this, and the first time it feels like impossible.
Mhm.
And now it still feels scary, but you're like, I have the tools, I have the skills, I know how to move through this now. I know that I need a coach, I know that I need to meditate, I know that I need to like do these things.
Mhm.
You have a different vocabulary, a different language, a different way of speaking about the challenges that you're facing. And rather than just, walking backwards and being like, hell no, I'm not dealing with that, which is what we would have done in the first instance because it all felt too big. Now it's like, okay, something doesn't feel right. You can instantly feel the energy shift. You can instantly feel when you go off track. And I always say, like, it becomes so much easier to get back on track. Whereas
Yeah.
before, I'd get knocked off and I might be off for a month. Now I get knocked off, and within a couple of hours, I can go, oh, wait, actually, something's not right. And I can dig in and I can figure out what it is instead of it taking, months, weeks, years to try and figure out, like, what has gone wrong. And I think
Yes.
that that's the difference. Like, the healing is still hard, the work is still hard. Like, it still feels hard. Like I do somatic therapy all of the time. It still feels hard every time I do a session. It's not like it gets easy. You're just able to navigate it more. You're able to look at it, like look at what is actually happening and
Yeah.
go, I have tools to do this. I have tools to pull on. And I think that it's just so incredible to see you stepping into this power, stepping into this space, saying, actually, this is what I'm being called to do, and really making that impact and actually shifting, generations of people rather than, just individually. So, like, you are the Amazon warrior. You are already. She is here. Like this is
She's here.
incredible.
Yeah. She's
She's
made
here.
herself known. Yeah. Um, yeah. The Valkyrie that was in my shadow and scaring people away, by the way. Like this Valkyrie was always there, and that's the interesting thing with you realize, oh, that's why that happened. That's why this pattern happened. Oh, it gives you so much insight and wonder. But yes, of course, it's still hard. Do you think that a bodybuilder goes to the gym and they're just like, okay, I haven't worked out for 6 months. I'm just going to lift 500 pounds. No, they lose fitness. It's always hard. You must challenge yourself. You must to grow. You must lean into discomfort. And if you don't, you're not really alive because things that don't move forward, things that don't move, things that don't grow, that's dead things.
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I always love the concept of that if you're standing still, you're actually moving backwards
Uh-huh. Because
because
life
everything around you is moving forwards. So if you are standing still and refusing to change, you are actually literally just dying. And I want that for nobody.
yeah, no. And I don't want to be attached to other people's I have a tendency to be like, I want this for you, for my clients, I really want this for you. And I get attached to it. Of course, as a coach, you really can't do that because it's up to them. And, they don't have your exact tools or the way your perspective and all these things. But I think I think it's good to have hope and to be excited for people's shifts and changes. I think that that's what they need, right? They're moving away from people who would keep them small to feel safe and begin to work with people who are excited for their growth and can give them tools to do that. That's a powerful shift. And
Mm.
when I chose to really invest really in coaches, like it started out small, like $600 for a 6-week program or $300 for a 6-week program, which felt huge, you know. And as time went by, like I would invest more because the shifts in my life were so great and they allowed me to open up to so much more opportunity for myself, be that in business or relationship and romance or, you know. So yeah, it's an exciting field to be in, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. And I've adored this conversation. Like, it's been so wonderful to get to know you and hear your story and share it with people. And it's just so incredible to see people doing this work in the world and really being passionate about the actual impact that they have, not just running the business, not just, doing the thing, but actually really care about the impact that they're having. So thank you so much for doing the work on yourself and helping others. Like, it's such an incredible gift. And as always, for everyone listening, I will put contact details, Instagram, all of that good stuff below, so you can go across and you can get involved. And if you want to reach out and work with Melissa, obviously you guys can do that as well. But it has been absolutely incredible to have you as part of the podcast. So thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story.
Thank you as well.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of The Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Diary of Discovery.